Question number 16 from practice test 9, this calculator section question, is one that's given students a lot of trouble. We always have to slow down and explain this particular question. I love to show it to students because it's definitely one that when you're applying the 10-second rule, it may be one that you end up skipping and coming back to later on because it has a lot of things you have to do. I really think it's mislabeled as question number 16 because at 16 in a calculator section, this should be like a level 2 medium difficulty question, and it's really not. This particular question has one thing you have to recognize, and there's a lot of steps to it. So I do think it's out of place as number 16. It should probably be placed higher. I've actually worked this problem with a group of math teachers, and working with those math teachers, only one of the 4 math teachers I was working with at the time could actually quickly solve the problem. And even when he solved it, he said, I really just looked at the answer choices and figured out only one of the answer choices made sense and used that, and it worked. So even he didn't really solve the problem in a way that he did. He just used that math experiences that he had to get it right. That's what makes this one really tricky and difficult. What most students do, and I talk about there being like a key moment that you recognize, most students understand that with this binomial right here, I'm going to create a quadratic equation out of that. And so just using FOIL method, there's other things you can do, but just using FOIL method, I'm going to get 4ax squared, and then outside terms are going to give me minus 4x. Inside terms are going to give me plus 4ax, and then the last terms are going to give me a minus 4. And then it's minus x squared plus 4. The other little piece of information I have is right here, that the expression is equivalent to bx. So I could have put bx here. I definitely want to have bx here. Now looking at what's going on in this equation, I have a negative 4 here and a positive 4 here, so those are going to cancel out. I don't have to worry about those anymore. An interesting note here on the difficulty of this particular question. In the College Board answer explanations right now, if you go to the answer explanations online or in the back of the blue book, they actually have a typo in their own answer explanation where they've left off this x right here, and they get to this point and it says it's minus 4, but they don't have the x. And that's just a typo on their answer explanation. But it definitely makes understanding how to get this a little more difficult because you're looking at it going, where do they have negative 4? Those should have canceled. They do cancel. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to group like terms. And when I do that, I'm going to get 4ax squared plus, minus x squared minus 4x plus 4ax equals bx. And this is really the critical moment here. Now that I've grouped these by like terms, I have this part of the equation here, and I have this part of the equation here. When I recognize that, everything else kind of falls into place. But recognizing this can be really difficult. Now I'm going to factor out this x squared and this x. So I'm going to have x squared times 4a minus 1. And I'm going to factor out negative x. So I'm going to get minus x times 4. And since I'm factoring out the negative x, that's going to be minus 4a. And I'm going to make that all equal to bx. This is what's critical, and this is where I think this particular problem goes to another level of difficulty. Since I do not have an x squared term on this side of the equation, I can recognize that this particular coefficient with the x squared has to equal 0. Now I've looked online, there's about 3 different ways to solve it, but all of them hinge on recognizing that 4a minus 1 has to equal 0. So if 4a equals 0, I can determine that 4a has to equal 1. And that really is the critical point now. If 4a equals 1, then once this equals 0, and since there's not an x squared term over here, now I can figure out, okay, then negative x times 4 minus 4a has to equal bx. And if 4a equals 1, obviously a is going to equal 1/4, but I don't have to do that. If I recognize that 4a equals 1, I can plug in there. So now I get negative x times 4 minus 1 equals bx. So when I do that, if I factor out this x right here, and I do 4 minus 1 is 3, so negative 3 is equal to b. The question asks, what is the value of b? Well, negative 3 is the value of b. Again, crazy complicated question, but a question that if you recognize this part right here, this is the key moment. Once you recognize that, you solve it. It's not a type of question we see very often on the test. I do think it's mislabeled, but it's a great question to use as a learning tool about how you can actually attack the problem and pick it apart. If you were doing this question live on the test, I would say skip it and come back to it at the end. Make sure you have a chance to answer all of the other questions if you were to hit this point and you were just left with a question mark about what to do next. Thanks for watching. Shane Bybee with Bybee College Prep. If there's another question that you want to have answered or you need help with, email me, Shane@Bybee College Prep. I'll be happy to put together a video that might help you answer it as well. Looking forward to talking to you soon. Thank you for watching.